താങ്ക് യു. ഉച്ചയ്ക്ക് ശേഷമുള്ള സെഷനാണ്. ഒരു ചാലഞ്ച് സോൾവ് ചെയ്യാൻ നമ്മൾ ഒരു എക്സ്ട്രാ ചാലഞ്ച് കൂടെ ആയി അത്. അപ്പം ഞാൻ കുറച്ച് ഇംഗ്ലീഷിൽ കുറച്ച് മലയാളത്തിൽ സംസാരിക്കാൻ ശ്രമിക്കാം എല്ലാവരുടെയും കൂടെ ബെനിഫിറ്റിന് വേണ്ടി. ONDC ഒരു കേന്ദ്ര സർക്കാർ സപ്പോർട്ടഡ് ഇനീഷ്യേറ്റീവാണ്. ഞങ്ങളൊരു നോട്ട് ഫോർ പ്രൊഫിറ്റ് സെക്ഷൻ 8 നോട്ട് ഫോർ പ്രോഫിറ്റ് കമ്പനിയാണ്. ഞങ്ങളുടെ സ്റ്റേക്ക് ഹോൾഡേഴ്സ് ബാങ്ക്സ്, വലിയ ഡെവലപ്മെൻറ്റ് ഇൻസ്റ്റിറ്റ്യൂഷൻസ്, സിഡ്ബി, സിഡ്കോ, നാബാർഡ് എന്നുള്ള ഡെവലപ്മെൻറ്റ് ഏജൻസീസാണ്. ആൻഡ് ഞങ്ങൾ തുടങ്ങിയിട്ടിപ്പോൾ ഒരു 1.5 കൊല്ലമായി. So I'll try and talk about what ONDC is, what we are trying to do, and how we expect to transform the e-commerce landscape in India. So I'll start by thanking Malabar Chamber of Commerce and Retail Association of India for inviting us to be a part of this session. Retail is one of the core areas where ONDC is currently working to transform digital commerce in India, and therefore very, very excited to be here back in Kozhikode talking about e-commerce. E-commerce penetration, അതായത് കുമാർ സാർ പറഞ്ഞു കോവിഡ് വന്നപ്പോഴാണ് ONDCയുടെ ജെനസിസ് ഉണ്ടായത്. എന്തുകൊണ്ട് ONDC വേണ്ടി വന്നു എന്ന് പറഞ്ഞപ്പോൾ കുമാർ സാർ പറഞ്ഞായിരുന്നു ദാറ്റ് കോവിഡ് ടൈം all online platforms were allowed to deliver, but your neighborhood retail stores, the supermarkets, the kirana stores, the cheragada kadagal, they were not allowed to deliver, right? Depending on state, of course, action varied, but that was a core problem. Suddenly you had everybody who had an app could deliver, from a warehouse, but the store nearby could not deliver, and it was a double whammy, right? As consumers, they were not getting everything they wanted, and as retail businesses, you were not able to service in an already bad environment due to lockdown. There was a further problem of not being able to service customers, and that became a big challenge. Now, when ONDC was set up, trying to improve this, make it easier for smaller businesses, many of your smaller businesses here come online, was one of the core goals, right? And if you look at what are the core challenges, now if you look at e-commerce penetration in India, e-commerce is inevitable, right? Like I think Radha sir said, it's not that you are an e-commerce business, but every business needs to be online and be able to sell and therefore bring revenues to themselves. And when the government looked at e-commerce penetration in India, we are at about 6 to 7%. And e-commerce penetration is largely today tier 1, coming to tier 2 and slowly moving. But how do we kind of bring about a step change in this e-commerce penetration in India? So ഒരു സെല്ലർ ഓൺലൈൻ വരണമെങ്കിൽ എന്താണ് ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടുകൾ? നമ്മളിൽ പലരും ഒരു വെബ്സൈറ്റ് തുടങ്ങും, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു ഇ-കോമേഴ്സ് എനേബിളർ, ഷോപ്പിഫൈ പോലെ ഒരു എനേബിളറിൽ പോയി ഒരു വെബ്സൈറ്റ് ഒക്കെ തുടങ്ങും. And we try to start a business, right? Or you go to one of the platforms, right? Sign up, make a catalog, upload your inventory and get started. But some of the big problems, Shopify lo or online website തുടങ്ങി കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ ഏറ്റവും വലിയ പ്രോബ്ലം ഡിമാൻഡ് എവിടെ നിന്ന് വരും, റൈറ്റ്? ആരാണ് നമ്മളെ കസ്റ്റമർ കൊണ്ടുവരിക? നമുക്കൊരു വെബ്സൈറ്റ് ഉണ്ടാക്കാം. It's fairly simple with the internet's proliferation. Making a website is very easy, but demand still remains a huge challenge, right? As a small business, where do you bring in the capital to invest to bring in demand? The same as if you have a Shopify enabled website, right? If you go to the platforms, our value challenge is margins, terms, payments, everything is dependent on how the platform decides. It's a one size fits all at a category level. Whatever they tell you is the only terms that you can operate in, right? You either listen to their terms or you are not on the platform, right? And you follow they set the rules of the business, and therefore ഒരു ചെറിയ ബിസിനസ് ഇതെല്ലാം ചെയ്തിട്ടും വന്നു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ the entire other part of setting up logistics, fulfillment, customer service, etc. ഒരു ചെറിയ ബിസിനസ്സിന് എല്ലാം കൂടെ ഓൺലൈൻ എനേബിൾമെൻറ്റ് വേണ്ടി ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടായിരിക്കും, റൈറ്റ്? ആൻഡ് ദീസ് ആർ സം ഓഫ് ദ ചാലഞ്ചസ് ദാറ്റ് ONDC is aspiring to solve. So let's talk about how do we want to do this, right? So when the government looked at what is inhibiting e-commerce penetration in India, right? And why are the platforms, while they have had some success, not able to get everybody on board? The lack of both customer and seller centricity was a huge problem to look at, and therefore we went and looked at what are the key problems, right? So some of the problems I spoke about. Now, how do we try and solve it? So one of the ways to look at it was that if we have to increase e-commerce, we have to bring everybody online. We have to bring the regular sellers, the shopkeepers online, and therefore bring about a transformative change, right? To do this, we want to do things, we call it unbundling and interoperability, and I'll try and explain. നമ്മളൊരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം എടുക്കുക, ഒരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം എടുത്തു കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിന് ഒരു കൺസ്യൂമർ സൈഡ് ഉണ്ട്, നമ്മളെല്ലാവരും ഒരു ആപ്പ് ഡൗൺലോഡ് ചെയ്യും, ഒരു സെല്ലർ സൈഡ് ഉണ്ട്, ആൻഡ് ദർ ഇസ് എ ബാക്ക് എൻഡ് പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം ദാറ്റ് കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് ടേക്സ് കെയർ ഓഫ് ഓപ്പറേറ്റിംഗ് ബിറ്റ്വീൻ ദീസ് ടു. ബട്ട് ദ കീ ചാലഞ്ച് ഇസ് ഒരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ നമ്മളൊരു സെല്ലറായിട്ട് ജോയിൻ ചെയ്ത ആ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിലെ കസ്റ്റമേഴ്സിന് മാത്രമേ നമുക്ക് ആക്സസ് ഉള്ളൂ, റൈറ്റ്? നമുക്ക് വേറൊരു പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിലെ കസ്റ്റമർ വേണമെങ്കിൽ ആ രണ്ടാമത്തെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിൽ പോയി നമ്മൾ ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യണം. എന്നിട്ട് അവിടെ രജിസ്റ്റർ ചെയ്യണം, അവിടെ കാറ്റലോഗ് ക്രിയേറ്റ് ചെയ്യണം, എന്നിട്ട് അവിടെ നിന്ന് വരുന്ന ഓർഡറുകൾ ട്രാക്ക് ചെയ്യണം. ഇതിനി ഒരു മൂന്നാമത്തെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം ആണെങ്കിൽ അവിടെയും പോയി ജോയിൻ ചെയ്യണം, റൈറ്റ്? സോ ദിസ് കൈൻഡ് ഓഫ് ഇൻഹിബിറ്റ്സ് ദാറ്റ് നമ്മൾ ഏതൊക്കെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിലാണ് വിൽ ഓൾസോ ഹാവ് എ വെരി സിഗ്നിഫിക്കൻറ്റ് ഇമ്പാക്ട് ഓൺ ഹൗ മച്ച് ബിസിനസ് ആർ യു ഏബിൾ ടു ജനറേറ്റ് ഫ്രം ഓൺലൈൻ. ദാറ്റ്സ് അനദർ പ്രോബ്ലം സ്റ്റേറ്റ്മെന്റ്, റൈറ്റ്? അപ്പം നോക്കിയപ്പോൾ ഇത് രണ്ടിനെയും ഒന്ന് അൺബണ്ടിൽ ചെയ്യുക. അതായത് യു ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് ദ സെലർ സൈഡ് ഓൺ ബോർഡിങ് ആസ് എ ടാസ്ക്, യു ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് ദ കസ്റ്റമർ ഓൺ ബോർഡിങ്, അതായത് ചെറുകിട കടകളെ പറ്റി പറഞ്ഞല്ലോ, മാർക്കറ്റിങ്ങിന് വേണ്ടിയുള്ള ബഡ്ജറ്റ്, റൈറ്റ്? ഇത് രണ്ടും കൂടെ അൺബണ്ടിൽ ചെയ്ത് രണ്ട് ഡിഫറെൻറ്റ് ബിസിനസ്സായിട്ട് കാണാനാണ് സർക്കാർ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നത്. അതായത് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, അതായത് കസ്റ്റമർ ഓൺ ബോർഡ് ഉള്ള ഒരു ബിസിനസ്സാണ് സേ എ ബാങ്ക് ഓർ എ പേയ്മെൻറ്റ് ആപ്ലിക്കേഷൻ വിച്ച് ഹാസ് മില്യൻസ് ഓഫ് കസ്റ്റമേഴ്സ്, റൈറ്റ്? ആൻഡ് സെലർ സൈഡിൽ സെല്ലറിനെ ഓൺ ബോർഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റിയ ഒരു ബിസിനസ്, അതായത് നിങ്ങളുടെ ERP, ഇന്നിവിടെ 2-3 ERPകളുടെ ഇനോഗ്രേഷൻ ഉണ്ടായ പേജ് ഇങ്ങോട്ട് അപ്ഫ്രണ്ട് ഓർമ്മയില്ല, ബട്ട് they are somebody who's deeply ingrained in your business, right? നിങ്ങൾ പലർക്കും ഫുഡും റീറ്റെയിൽ സ്റ്റോഴ്സും സൂപ്പർ മാർക്കറ്റ്സും ഉള്ളവർക്ക് ഒരു പോയിന്റ് ഓഫ് സെയിൽ ആപ്ലിക്കേഷൻ ഉണ്ട്, റൈറ്റ്? All of them are very ingrained in your business. Imagine if that point of sale application also can start giving you e-commerce orders, right? And in simple terms, that's what we're trying to enable, and how I will try and explain. Okay? നമുക്ക് നമ്മൾ ഒരു ഇമെയിലിൻ്റെ എക്സാമ്പിൾ എടുക്കുകയാണ്. ഇഫ് ഐ സെൻഡ് യു എൻ ഇമെയിൽ, ഇറ്റ് സീംലെസ്ലി റീച്ചസ് യു വിതൗട്ട് ഹാവിങ് എനി ഡിഫിക്കൽട്ടി. നമ്മൾ ഒരു ടെക്നിക്കൽ ഇൻറ്റഗ്രേഷൻ, നമ്മുടെ സിസ്റ്റത്തിൽ നിന്ന് ഇമെയിൽ അയച്ചു, intended recipient on his email system, whether it's Yahoo or Gmail, got that email with no particular technical intervention, right? ആരും ഇതിനകത്ത് ടെക്നിക്കലി ഒന്നും ചെയ്യേണ്ട. Email works seamlessly. All of this happens because email uses a simple protocol called SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, right? Similarly, ONDC is trying to build a commerce protocol. We've already built it and it's live. And what we are trying to do is, ഒരു buyer, നമ്മുടെ ഒരു കസ്റ്റമർ ഏതെങ്കിലും ഒരു ആപ്ലിക്കേഷനിൽ നിന്ന് നമ്മൾ as a seller on any application should be able to interact with each other. അതായത് നിങ്ങൾ SBI ബാങ്ക് ഓപ്പൺ ചെയ്യുന്നൊരു കസ്റ്റമർ ആണെങ്കിൽ ആ SBI ബാങ്കിൽ നിന്ന് ഒരു ഓർഡർ പ്ലേസ് ചെയ്താൽ അത് നിങ്ങളുടെ പോയിന്റ് ഓഫ് സെയിൽ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ റീറ്റെയിൽ ERP വഴി നിങ്ങൾക്ക് കിട്ടണം, റൈറ്റ്? ഇതാണ് ഈ ബാക്ക് എൻഡ് ONDC ഇൻഫ്രാസ്ട്രക്ചർ അച്ചീവ് ചെയ്യാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നത്. ഇതിൽ വേറെ വ്യത്യാസം എന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, നിങ്ങൾ ഏത് ബയർ ആപ്ലിക്കേഷനിലാണെങ്കിലും നിങ്ങളുടെ റീറ്റെയിൽ ERPയിൽ ഓർഡർ വരണം, റൈറ്റ്? അപ്പോൾ എന്താണ് വേണ്ടത്? ഒരു കോമൺ ലാംഗ്വേജ് വേണം, റൈറ്റ്? നമ്മൾ ഈ എല്ലാ സിസ്റ്റംസും സംസാരിക്കുന്ന ഭാഷ കോമൺ ആയിരിക്കണം, റൈറ്റ്? ആൻഡ് ദെയർഫോർ trying to build that aspect is what the ONDC protocol is. അതായത് ഏത് ബയർ ഏത് ആപ്ലിക്കേഷൻ, നിങ്ങൾ ഫോൺ പേയിലാവാം, നിങ്ങൾ പേടിഎമ്മിലാവാം, എവിടെ നിന്ന് സെർച്ച് ചെയ്താലും നിങ്ങളുടെ കാറ്റലോഗ് ആദ്യം ഡിസ്പ്ലേ ചെയ്യണം ഫ്രം യുവർ റീറ്റെയിൽ ERP ഓർ യുവർ POS സിസ്റ്റം ആൻഡ് ബി ഏബിൾ ടു ടേക്ക് എൻ ഓർഡർ ആൻഡ് പ്ലേസ് എൻ ഓർഡർ. ഐ വിൽ ടോക്ക് മോർ അബൌട്ട് ഇറ്റ്. അതായത് ഇന്നത്തെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോംസ്, ഗോയിങ് ബാക്ക്, ഞാൻ ആദ്യം പറഞ്ഞ കാര്യം നോക്കി, ഇന്നത്തെ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോംസിനെ പറ്റി നമ്മളൊന്ന് നോക്കിക്കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, ഇഫ് യു ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് ദ 3 columns, റൈറ്റ്? ദ ഫസ്റ്റ് പാർട്ട് ഇസ് വാട്ട് ദ കസ്റ്റമർ ഡസ്, സെർച്ച് ഫോർ പ്രോഡക്റ്റ്, ബിൽഡ് കാർട്ട്, പേയ്മെൻറ്റ്. ആണല്ലോ ഒരു സാധാരണ കസ്റ്റമർ ഓൺലൈൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത്, റൈറ്റ്? നടക്കത്തെ ഭാഗമാണ് ഒരു ബിസിനസ് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഒരു സെല്ലർ ഓൺലൈൻ ചെയ്യുന്നത്. നമ്മളൊരു കാറ്റലോഗ് ഉണ്ടാക്കും, കിട്ടുന്ന ഓർഡേഴ്സിന് ഫുൾഫിൽമെൻറ്റ് പ്ലാൻ ചെയ്യും, റിട്ടേൺസ്, ക്യാൻസലേഷൻ, പേയ്മെൻറ്റ്സ് എക്സെട്ര. ആൻഡ് ഓൾസോ മൂന്നാമത്തെ ഭാഗമാണ് ഓർഡർ ഡെലിവറി, റൈറ്റ്? നമ്മളൊരു സെല്ലർ ആണെങ്കിൽ പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം 1, പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം 2, ഇത് 2 പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം ആണെങ്കിൽ രണ്ടിലും ഈ സെൻട്രൽ ഭാഗം നമ്മൾ 2 പ്രാവശ്യം ചെയ്യണം, right? 2 platforms means 2. If it's 5 platforms, this means 5, right? All of this has to be redone everywhere, right? That's primarily because the platforms don't talk to each other. Everybody's got a closed ecosystem, walled gardens as they call it. Now in the ONDC world, what we are trying to do is ee 3 bhagangal, adayathu search for what the consumer does, what the seller does, and what logistics is. We are imagining is this as 3 different businesses, right? All of them seamlessly operating with each other on the ONDC protocol, right? So there is a retail buying application which the consumer uses. There is a retail selling application. An example was your POS or ERP which sellers use, and there is a last mile order delivery system from a logistics company. It can be hyper local or it can be across the country. That all three of them seamlessly operate on the ONDC protocol. അപ്പോൾ ഇതിൽ നിന്നുള്ള മാറ്റം എന്താണ് വരാൻ പോകുന്നതെന്ന് വെച്ച് കഴിഞ്ഞാൽ, everybody can talk to everybody, right? Firstly, let's open the walled gardens or the closed ecosystems. അതായത് പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിനകത്തുള്ള പാർട്ടീസ് തമ്മിലല്ല, പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോമിന് പുറത്ത് വേറെ ഏത് ONDC കംപ്ലയൻറ്റ് ആപ്ലിക്കേഷനിലും ഉള്ള പാർട്ടീസ് തമ്മിൽ സംസാരിക്കാൻ പറ്റും. അതാണ് ഏറ്റവും വലിയ ആദ്യത്തെ ചേഞ്ച്. ആൻഡ് ഹൗ ഡസ് ദിസ് ചേഞ്ച്? നൗ ലെറ്റ്സ് ലുക്ക് അറ്റ് ഹൂ വിൽ ബിക്കം എ റീറ്റെയിൽ ബൈയിങ് ആപ്ലിക്കേഷൻ. അതായത് ഇന്ന് e-commerceൽ ഇല്ലാത്ത പലർക്കും e-commerceൽ വരാൻ പറ്റും. സ്റ്റാർട്ടിങ് ഫ്രം സെല്ലർ ഓൺവേർഡ്സ് എവറിബഡി ഈസ് ഏബിൾ ടു എൻറ്റർ ദി e-commerce സിസ്റ്റം ബിക്കോസ് ഓഫ് ദിസ് ചേഞ്ച്. കാരണം ഒരു ബിസിനസ്സിന് e-commerce വരണമെങ്കിൽ ഈ 3 കോമ്പണൻസും ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്യണം, റൈറ്റ്? നമ്മൾ ബയർ സൈഡ് ആപ്പും ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്യണം, പ്ലാറ്റ്ഫോം ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്യണം, സെല്ലർസ് ആപ്പ് ആയിട്ട് ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്യണം, ആൻഡ് ബാക്ക് എൻഡ് കോറും ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്ത് ലോജിസ്റ്റിക്സും ബിൽഡ് ചെയ്യണം. എവറിഥിങ് ഹാസ് ടു ബി ബിൽഡ് ഇഫ് യു ഹാവ് ടു കം. Now in the ONDC ecosystem, you can play one or more roles depending on what you want to do. For example, if you are the Federal Bank application, we are talking to them, right? Federal Bank, Keralathile popular bank, right? Palarilla app on right? Imagine if you could order grocery from Federal Bank, right? If Federal Bank suppose launches a buying application, then on the Federal Bank application, they will need to, you will be able to order. And why Federal Bank? Why did I take an example of Federal Bank? It is an established banking application, popular among customers, and in the catchment area of Kerala, all customers, a very large segment of population already uses it, right? But today, Federal Bank cannot do e-commerce because Federal Bank is not connected to stores. Federal Bank doesn't know who has what inventory. Federal Bank doesn't do logistics. But on the ONDC network, as an example, right, Federal Bank could start becoming an e-commerce entity. So any large application with a niche or a large consumer base can potentially become a buyer application, right? Similarly, retail seller application. I mean, most of you would have some kind of a technology in the store, either a POS system or a retail ERP or an inventory system, right? All of these applications individually or collectively could all become your seller application that will onboard your store, right? What is the store finally online? It is a list of products as a catalog. There is attributes, there is pricing, right? These attributes our retail application directly connective, they are able to directly make you online, right? And of course, logistics will be provided by specialist logistics player. Retail seller application is thought. Similarly, logistics, right? A third party logistics application which is not interacted with these stores or these retail buying application will be able to do logistics for anybody on the network. Now, what does this mean? How does the ONDC network logically appear, right? So, if you are a buyer, namala buyer app A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and I'll show you actual numbers, right? A, the buyer app will be provided by the respective logistics companies, right? So, what does ONDC look like today, right? So, today we have 12 buyer applications with close to 100 million potential customers. There are 10 logistics applications, and you'll see who's who of there, and about 35 seller applications with 1.79 lakh sellers and more than 1 crore SKUs that have been already onboarded onto the network, right? All of these applications have brought in different applications working together, and you can look at the number. That's 22 plus 35, 57 applications, number growing every week, right? 57 applications which are collectively building the entire network, right? So if you are a seller, you have to look at names here, right? There is Global Linker, there is UEngage, Innobit. Some of these are familiar names, Samudai. Anybody who's in the business of working with sellers, right? And if it's retail, it's an ERP. If it's food, it's a point of sale device, are currently, onboarding sellers across India. And we've hit 1.79 lakh sellers across India. There are sellers across Kerala also, but numbers are early. And about 1 crore SKUs, right? So you can join the network in many ways, right? Like I said, if you are a company like Unilever is on the network, right? Unilever is a big company. They have huge engineering team, etc. So they have done the integration themselves. So for large companies, that makes sense, right? And it's an upfront investment. If you are a seller and want to come online, all you need to do is come to the ONDC website, and I'll give you all the links in the end, where you join any of these seller apps. They will sign a contract with you, charge you a commission structure that is comfortable to you. Very important that you are comfortable with. There is no compulsion, and you will be able to give them a catalog. Say these are the 10 products I have, 50 products I have, 100 products I have, with a description and pricing, right? And they will upload it and voila, you're live, right? And when a consumer in your area or a consumer nationally searching for your product or service is looking for it, you will come up in search depending on the search algorithm. You will come up in search and you will be able to service that order, right? But online avan aga vendiyathu oru catalog aanu. It's as simple as that. You have to talk to one of these 35 companies, right? And it's open. And any one of them can bring you on board. One or two other important things, right? As a seller, your identity on the network is unique. This is one of the things we wanted to change from the platform. Platform platform A platform A ennu vidunnu. Platform A to dispute on right? Platform A everything that you did, including your ratings, customer feedback, everything you have to leave behind, right? You're out of the platform. Whereas on the network, your identity is yours. Key parameters of your identity. If you don't like Growth Falcon, you want to go to UEngage, please feel free. Your core parameters of your ID will move with you. So if you're a 4.8 rated great food app, food company, right? Then irrespective of which seller app you're on, that ID is yours, right? This is something that today's e-commerce doesn't provide, that your ID is a function of the platform, and across the every platform has a unique ID for you and a unique rating for you, for example, right? Now that will move with you, right? And very, very powerful in that sense. I mean, I work in mobility a lot, so I'll talk about Uber, Ola, right? Or an equivalent third app. If you are on platform A, you've done 5,000 rides, you leave the platform, right? You're 4.95 rated driver, right? You're on platform B, it's day 0, trip 1, rating 0. Whereas on ONDC, if you move, it's day 500, rating trip number 5001 and rating 4.95, right? You still continue to carry your core parameters as your own, right? As a seller, whatever rating, whatever credibility you have established can move. And that also makes the entire network experience powerful, right? The other thing that the network does is now e-commerce cost structures, this 25-30% is not just a function of, unscrupulous business practices, right? I want to be for a minute kind to them, right? It's also a function of how these businesses are built by doing everything themselves, right? They do everything from building the tech, building the supply, building the demand, logistics, everything by themselves, which fundamentally may not be the most efficient way to do. And that's one of the things we did by unbundling, right? So I used to work for Nissan, and let's look at a car, right? The car gets infotainment from somebody, the tires come from somebody, right? The windshield comes from somebody, right? All of these are different companies. And if you go to any automobile, manufacturing hub, there is a tier 1, which is the OEM. Then there is a tier 1 company, that's the primary supplier, tier 2, tier 3, and sometimes even tier 4 and 5, right? Starting from a nut upwards, there are different companies that collaborate to build it. And that's what, as we endeavor in e-commerce, what we want to do is, we want everybody to bring in their best, right? Now, Federal Bank doesn't need to invest millions of dollars in customer acquisition for e-commerce. They already have, a couple of million customers in Kerala's banking customers, right? So they don't need to charge you and recover the 3,000 rupees that, a buyer app or a consumer app has spent to acquire you through, say, Google targeted ads, right? That money is something that Federal Bank doesn't need to, right? Similarly, as seller apps, these are not companies that need to do door-to-day sales, create a new entire, hierarchy to go and acquire, sellers, right? They have been talking to you for probably 10, 15, 20, maybe even 30 years in some case, right? And therefore, they already have established relationships. Therefore, even they don't need to necessarily charge you for the money that they have spent to acquire you as customers, right? The ROI of the business is very simple because existing players with their respective strengths, right, are coming to be a part of the business. And therefore, the overall cost structure is far better than what we see in e-commerce. And therefore, the margin structure for everybody is better. And therefore, there is an opportunity to be win-win for everybody. I'll move ahead, right? So those are the 57 applications. There is 140 plus in advanced stages. All of these are integrating some of the biggest brands you will see, right? There are 13,000 plus applications under registration who are at different stages of integration and come. We were a couple of applications, as Koshi said earlier today, we were doing, I think, about 1,000 orders in a month in January, right? Last weekend we did 2 lakh orders, close to 2 lakh orders, about 96,000 orders in retail and about 1 lakh orders in mobility, right? So we're rapidly expanding and all of these brands are in the process of getting integrated, right? So I'll move, this is just an example of how an order will happen, right? So while the context is Delhi, right? Think about somebody who wants to order an 5 kg atta bag, right? You search, you find somebody to buy and then you deliver. Now, on the same network, this order can happen in multiple ways, right? And that's the power of an open network. It's an open network, not closed ecosystem, fostering forced rules, right? First is you open your favorite buyer app. In this case, it can be, say, GPay, right? And then you say, search, I want a bag of atta, right? It comes up. There are multiple stores that comes up. There is a store called Gupta. Gupta store comes up. And there is also Big Basket, right? And therefore, you look at it and say, where do I want to buy? The customer says, okay. 3 ways he can buy it. He can buy it and say, okay, I want it from Gupta and I also want logistics taken care by Gupta, right? So Gupta will say, okay, the bag costs 50 without delivery and another 70 rupees for delivery, 120 rupees. It's one order to Gupta, right? The second is you say, no, I'll buy it from Gupta, but let me order logistics myself. Doesn't happen today anywhere. In e-commerce, you don't get to pick your logistics. I'm not saying you should always, but there may be places where you want to pick up, right? So the network orders the flexibility. You're able to say, okay, I will pick it up, but I'll order it logistics separately, 2 orders placed, right? The third is somebody like a Big Basket, right? Because also on the network and comes up and says, okay, I will take care of everything and I will deliver it, right? And all 3 different modes of ordering are possible on the ONDC network seamlessly today, right? And the network doesn't govern or restrict how the consumer wants to operate or how the seller wants to operate. All 3 modes possible. It's a function of the consumer and the seller choice on how they want to interact. Moving on, these are all apps that are live. There is a pin code on the right is the PhonePe app. It's an exclusively app launched for ONDC, e-commerce on ONDC. Pin code is not available in Kozhikode. They're, I think, present in about 10-15 cities. It'll come to you. But, the entire PhonePe muscle is there. Some of these apps will be available here. You can scan, try placing an order and tell us how it is. Kozhikode is still young, right? We have very few sellers here, but you can of course try the entire ONDC experience using one of these buyer apps, right? Now, I also want to highlight one or two other things. While we build this, right, what you're also doing is, from a seller standpoint, this is very important for you to recognize, ningaloru seller matramalla, right? You also buy stuff from wholesalers, you also take credit. All of these services will also be available on the ONDC network. So the seller on the ONDC network will also be a buyer, right? Ningal vaangunna sadhanangal, right? If it is from your distributor, wholesaler, those orders will also be, something that you can place on ONDC. If there is anything else that you want to procure from a store point, that's also will be possible on the ONDC network. So this is where we are live. Some of these domains are young, but you will see traction in them. So in B2C, we are live in food and beverages. You can order from restaurants. We are live in grocery, home and kitchen, electronic appliances, BPC, agri, health and wellness, and fashion. In services, we are live in mobility, right? In B2B, we're today live in grocery and fashion, and this is the ordering on the channel that I spoke about. And in services, we of course live in logistics. We have financial products coming in, credit, right, insurance, etc. All that you could be able to buy from the ONDC network, as well as third-party services like plumbing, carpenter, equivalent. They're also currently in the process of being, onboarded onto the network. So that's the next things that are coming in. One way to look at it is that any product or service eventually will be available on the ONDC network. It's just a matter of sequencing, right? Anything that you buy. So the other way to look at it is what UPI did to payments, right? You can buy, you can be on GPay, I can be on PhonePe, I can be on the ICICI mobile app, and we are able to seamlessly transact. Similarly, any product or service commerce transaction between any set of apps should be possible using the ONDC network, right? So eventually everything will come. If you're not there today, you will come soon. So this is another example that I want to talk about how this will transform the consumer experience, right? Today, if you are a consumer, right, you are based in Delhi and കൊച്ചിയിലേക്ക് ഒരു ട്രാൻസ്ഫർ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ തിരുവനന്തപുരത്തേക്ക് ഒരു ട്രാൻസ്ഫർ വന്ന് ഒരു ടെമ്പററി പോസ്റ്റിംഗ് വരികയാണ്, റൈറ്റ്? സോ യു വിൽ ഹാവ് ടു ഗോ ടു ആമസോൺ ടു ബൈ എ സൂട്ട് കേസ്. You will go to Make My Trip to buy your flight ticket, or you go to IRCTC to buy your railway ticket, right? You want to take a service apartment, you go to Airbnb, or come back to Make My Trip, or come back to one of the other platforms to see where accommodation is available, or you book a hotel. You may buy a basic Malayalam language kit, Malayalam ko venda, but mattullavarku, right? And you will have multiple checkouts across multiple platforms, right? In the ONDC world, a Federal Bank application or equivalent will be in a position to give you all of these services or products in a single place, right? So an integrated journey experience. So let me talk about two other integrated experiences that we are trying to build, right? Both are in mobility. Pardon me, I also lead mobility nationally, so there will be a little bit of extra mobility in this retail environment, right? So imagine that you're traveling from, in a dense city like Kochi, you're traveling from point A to point B, right? Which involves, you could do a point-to-point using an Uber, Ola, or an equivalent cab. We have Yatri in Kochi as the ONDC app, right? You could take the metro, do the first mile walking, take the metro, last mile auto, right? Or you could take, in some cities, you could take a bike taxi on first mile, metro, middle mile, and last mile, right? Imagine if this entire journey experience could be a single QR ticket that you purchase, right? And that's what we're trying to build in saying that somebody will offer bike taxi, the metro will offer metro, and somebody else will offer, say, an auto, or a journey planner that will say, okay, this is only 500 meters, just walk it, right? This entire experience on a single. Today, this is not possible because each city will need you, an individual app, either the metro app or the bike taxi app, to go onboard everybody else, right? And when you have to do it in 50 cities, it becomes a humongous task for most businesses. Whereas, if all these 50 businesses join ONDC network themselves, right? All of their inventories are available, and some buyer app like Federal Bank can come and start stitching all of this together and start offering it. I'll also go back to another example. Let's look at travel only, right? Somebody's coming for a vacation in Kerala, right? If you're lucky, you'll get a tour operator, but then trust is a problem. But you will go, book a flight ticket. Or let's take a business trip, right? Some of you all do a business trip. ഒരു കോൺഫറൻസ് അറ്റൻഡ് ചെയ്യാൻ ബാംഗ്ലൂർ പോവാണ്, റൈറ്റ്? എയർപോർട്ടിൽ പോകാനൊരു ക്യാബ്, എയർപോർട്ടിലൊരു ഫ്ലൈറ്റ് ടിക്കറ്റ്, അവിടെ ചെന്നൊരു ഹോട്ടൽ 2 ദിവസം, അവിടെ വേണമെങ്കിൽ സൈറ്റ് സീയിങ് എന്തെങ്കിലും ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അതിനൊരു ക്യാബ്, തിരിച്ച് അഗെയിൻ എ ഫ്ലൈറ്റ് ടിക്കറ്റ് ആൻഡ് 1 more ക്യാബ് ഇൻ യുവർ റിട്ടേൺ, റൈറ്റ്? So many things are either on demand or scattered across your email, right? Flight ticket to travel agent ayichu, flight ticket onboarding cheyidu, boarding pass email evado kadapponda nammodu poi search cheyunu, right? Hotel booking nammodu voucher tappundu email le, right? And you come back and all of these are bespread. Now imagine if on a single app page you open an app, right? And all of this inventory has been onboarded by different people, right? But you are able to see an integrated journey experience saying, okay, let me open Federal Bank app, and on Federal Bank I say, okay, here is my cab, right? This is the driver number, this is the pickup time, here is my flight ticket, check-in karinju, here is my boarding pass, here is my hotel voucher or hotel details, location, cab, etc. Here is my return flight, here is my return cab, etc. The entire journey experience in one place, right? What we are doing is, if companies all bring their inventories together, right, then technology companies can stitch this entire buyer experience or consumer experience and offer it to consumers and build it, right? So as core important things that I would want to bring to you is, I think it's on the next slide, just 1 minute, right? So there's a whole bunch. I'm not going to talk about every point, right? Let's take a minute from a seller standpoint, right? What are the important things? You join one app, any seller app out of that 35, you are potentially discoverable on every buyer app, right? There's no restriction. As long as you are probably a relevant item that is being searched, you will be discoverable to everybody. You don't need to join multiple apps, right? Maintain one-time single registration. For those of you who do e-commerce today, you know, ഓരോ പോർട്ടലിൻ്റെയും ഓരോ ഓർഡറിനെയും നമ്മൾ ആ പോർട്ടലിൽ ചെന്ന് ട്രാക്ക് ചെയ്യണം, റൈറ്റ്? അതിൻ്റെ പേയ്മെൻറ്റ്, അതിൻ്റെ കളക്ഷൻ, കംപ്ലയിൻറ്റ്, റൈറ്റ്? ഓൾ ഓഫ് ദാറ്റ് ഇസ് എ സിംഗിൾ registration. Then complete value chain access. You also get logistics, you also get all the other features that the network offers, like complaint management. All of that comes seamlessly to you. It's your rules and terms, right? We always say this, every time an order comes in, you have to decide whether you want to fulfill it, right? Certain product you may be willing to pay 3% margin, certain product you may be willing to pay 5% margin, but it's your call, right? Unlike the e-commerce platform where you accept rules absolutely, right? Of course, increased profitability, business analytics, network-wide reputation I spoke about. This is that part where you said, if you move, your reputation moves with you, right? You have a 4.9 rated or a 9 rated app, it will move with you. And no disintermediation risk. Any consumer order that comes in, you know who the consumer is, who's ordering, and therefore you have, CRM capabilities on that order, right? And of course, lastly, I'll talk if there are any tech folks in the room, if you want to build out, you can always build things like connectors, look at local ecosystems, right? One of the things that we're seeing is there's a strong need for local entrepreneurs to come in and help the local community, right? Every time you can't be dependent on a Bangalore app or a Chennai app to come in and build the market for you, right? There's a very, very strong opportunity, right? Now, Calicut, I don't know, will be how many stores, right? Probably, I'll hazard a guess, say 50,000 stores, right? These 50,000 stores have an opportunity for a local set of companies to come in and power you to the ONDC network. And we do a lot of work with young startups, and if there's anybody in the crowd, would strongly encourage you to consider building local products, right? There are reference apps, etc. that ONDC is already built, but will be able to, your ability to serve a local consumer will be far better than a Bangalore-based company or a Chennai-based company or a Bombay-based company to serve, or even a Kochi-based company for that matter. And therefore, there is significant opportunity for technology companies to come in, right? So going back, ONDC, like I explained, it's back-end infrastructure, right? You may not see ONDC. You cannot log into the ONDC website and say, okay, search for product, or you will not as a seller log into ONDC and get registered, right? ONDC is a network. We bring together apps which are individual businesses or businesses that bring businesses together, right? We are an open network capability in infrastructure. There is infinite models and are very interesting models emerging, new businesses emerging. See, think of it this way. Many players who couldn't do e-commerce today because of the entire cost of doing this entire 360-degree e-commerce ecosystem, now you need to do in parts, and therefore new businesses are emerging, right? We're not a central intermediary. In fact, the entire business is such that one important point that I'd like to highlight is, once the search discovery is over, right? When the order is placed, it's a direct order from the buyer app to the seller app, while the network is in the middle during search and discovery. If you are on Federal Bank placing an order on UEngage for a restaurant, say a biryani, right? It's a transaction with a buyer on Federal Bank with a seller, Fatima Biryani on UEngage, right? The network doesn't come in between. It's a direct transaction, and therefore there is no central intermediary bringing rates down, right? Like I said, we're not an application. There is no one single model. We are not a central, and most importantly, we are not a regulator, right? We often ask this, will you regulate pricing? Will you regulate commissions? We are not a regulator. We are market and community led, and we let the opportunity to be that the market forces govern things like commissions, etc., and not regulation, right? So I think some closing thoughts. We are a Make in India. We are part of the Made in India, Make in India initiatives, right? There is no precedence of a similar network anywhere else in the world. It's unique in that sense, and it's first of the kind, right? This is our advisory council. Kumar sir is one of our advisors, and this is the advisory council that helps set up ONDC. We started in June of 2021 as an idea. The company was set up in December 2021. We did our first beta launch in September 2022 in Bangalore, right? So we're a little over a year old from the transactions going live. And today, this is what our numbers look like, right? We have 1.79 lakh sellers, 1 crore products, 435 cities where alpha is live, 7 cities where beta testing is happening, right? So broadly, if you want to join the network, you can scan the QR, it'll give you an attendance sheet. Please fill in your details. Else, you can go to the ONDC website, just look at the network participant tab. You'll see the same form. At any point in time, feel free to log in and just register. Somebody will pick up the process and guide you through, right? But like I said, the easiest way is, look at the seller app list, look at what they do, and look at the one that excites you the most, and have a conversation with and just get onboarded, right? With that, I will take a pause. Do we have time for Q&A?
Yes, obviously. Okay. There are a lot of people who are interested.
Sure. So we'll move to Q&A. Happy to take any questions. And Malayalam, please feel free to ask questions. I'll try my best, but to the best of my ability to answer them.
Thanks, Nitin. Thank you very much. Yeah. No. Give me a second.
Hi, my name is Sumesh. Actually, one of the major problem with the companies like Amazon, the merchants is not being exposed to the actual customer data. So in the case of ONDC, will the merchants will be able to understand who is the customer, and can we get the database of those customers also who is our buyers?
You will not get a database, but you can create one, because every time you get an order
of our customers.
Exactly. So every time you get an order, so I know in food, this is a common crib. Restaurant doesn't know who ordered. Somebody comes, takes a biryani, right? Here, you will know which customer placed an order and what is his address, etc. All the details will be provided to you. There is some CRM possibilities, but I would also leave a note of caution. If you try contacting the customer directly, eventually the buyer apps won't want to work for you. But if you want to build customer understanding, customer targeting, etc., that data is always available for you to you to consume, because with every order the data comes in. You will have to build the capability to store, manage, and organize the data, but the data is available.
Got it. Thanks.
Sorry. So what I meant is that, think of it this way, right? You got the customer information, and the next half an hour you send them an offer saying next time buy directly from me, right? So then that becomes a problem, right? So on both sides we need to have a basic ethical part of the business, right? If the buyer app is providing you an order, right, and he's providing you customer details, what they don't want is you directly on the side reaching out to the consumer, right? So there will definitely be concerns there. This is still an open area, but I think the buyer app philosophy is very clear. They're very happy to share the data as long as you're not trying to take the customer away from the buyer app, right? Wherever he's the point is the customer has choice to order from anywhere, including your website, right? But as long as you're not drawing him away from the buyer app, there is no problem. The data will anyway come to you.
So if you were to break it down, now I have a men's clothing website.
Sure.
It's on Shopify, right? What is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 for me?
Sir, step 1 for you is one of the ONDC seller apps is a company called Shopalist, and I'm speaking from my memory. There could be others, right? Shopalist has built a Shopify connector to ONDC, right? So you have all these connectors on Shopify, right? All kinds of connectors, right? Payment, apps, right?
Yeah.
So there is an app called Shopalist, right? And Shopalist is an ONDC certified connector. You go to Shopalist, they will in about 2 to 3 days get your entire Shopify app ONDC enabled.
That's it.
That's it.
And we're good to go.
Yes, you're good to go. So next, when somebody searches for any clothing that you have, right? If it's relevant, contextual to that customer, Paytm based on the search results will start showing it to the customer. So the whole idea is to simplify it, and Shopalist, of course, it will take 2-3 days. And we are now trying to make the connectors also so seamless that you can download, double click and go. But we are not there yet. But it's as simple as getting a connector and enabling a Shopify website.
And the magic bullet here for us, all of us, is the cost of doing business is coming down.
Yes. What we are seeing is that, well, I'll not quote numbers, that the entire, intermediation cost, right, that the e-commerce platform charge, we're seeing significant reduction in that across categories.
So it'll encourage all of us to come onto online because it's not as prohibitively expensive as it was.
Yes, absolutely. And that's an important. The other point is, structurally, if you look at it, we are trying to leverage the existing distribution network, right? So if you are a part of a big brand, that you sell the products of that big brand in a local store in your city, right? It makes no sense to spend a lot of money and logistically bring it from Bangalore warehouse like some of what the e-commerce platforms do, versus doing a local, 1 kilometer delivery. Right? And that's structurally how we look at it. It may not work for all businesses, as we go forward, but that's the thinking behind the entire, effort.
Cut out all the inefficiencies.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just want to ask you. So, is it better to onboard yourself as a brand onto the platform, or is there an advantage in being represented through a seller app? Because I've seen some brands, I've seen some platforms.
Yeah.
So, what's a trade-off?
Sir, you will always onboard as your brand.
That is the
Right,
better
by
one.
far. No. I'm saying conceptually, both modes, your brand doesn't go away.
Okay.
Right? Your Ayurveda brand by far will be by far, right?
Okay.
The technical integration is something that the consumer doesn't see.
Okay.
The difference essentially is, do you have the capability and the, team or people or investment to get that entire integration done? Which is why you'll see a Unilever which has that wherewithal to have come itself. Yeah, so U-Shop, there is Unilever, right? They have the capability. Whereas if you're a smaller company, right, your brand doesn't change. You'll still be by Ayurveda.
Okay.
But you can come via a seller app, which will help you onboard faster. So it's a question of at what stage do you want to be directly connected. In fact, without quoting names, some big brands, they immediately onboarded because they said, okay, let's put 20 SKUs and see what happens. Because even the biggest brand can, use one of the seller apps and quickly come on board in a day. Right? So from the time I spoke to Big Basket to them going live was 48 hours. They said we want to experiment with private label products, right? They spoke to a couple of our seller apps. They chose one, they put 10 SKUs, and 48 hours they were live. Right?
And can you also have services? Like, let's say, for example, a doctor consultation kind of thing.
That is coming, sir. So we are currently in the process of, we've already so that's the health and wellness category, right?
Okay.
So everything will come. Health and wellness. Today we are offering non-prescription drugs.
Yeah.
Prescription is coming. There are regulatory, considerations that the entire network needs to adhere to, and that's work in progress. And therefore, in service also things like diagnostic consultation, all of that will also be on the network. Right? Essentially, think of it as we are unbundling everything in commerce, right? So in consultation, what are we unbundling? You can, from Federal Bank, SBI, or Paytm, set up a doctor consultation in Aster. Right? These two different companies will interact using the network. Right? So fundamentally, the unbundling can happen for any product or service.
നമ്മൾ പൊതുവേ ഈ ONDC ചില ഒരു ഭയത്തോടു കൂടി കാണുന്ന ഒരു വിഭാഗമുണ്ട്. കാരണം ഇപ്പോൾ ഓൾറെഡി ഓൺലൈൻ ബിസിനസ് നമ്മുടെ ലോക്കൽ ഷോപ്സിൻ്റെ ബിസിനസ്സിനെ ഈറ്റ് ചെയ്ത് പോവാണ് എന്നുള്ളൊരു തോട്ട് പ്രോസസ്സുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ തിരിച്ച് നമ്മൾ ഇതിൻ്റെ പബ്ലിസിറ്റിയും കാര്യങ്ങളൊക്കെ കാണുമ്പം ഇത് നമ്മുടെ സാധാരണ കടകളുടെ ഹെൽപ്പ് ചെയ്യുമെന്ന് പറയുന്നുണ്ട്. അപ്പോൾ അതൊന്നും കൂടെ എക്സ്പ്ലെയിൻ ചെയ്ത് അതെങ്ങനെ ഈ നമ്മുടെ സാധാരണ കടകൾക്ക് അല്ലെങ്കിൽ സാധാരണ നമ്മുടെ നാട്ടിൻപുറത്തുള്ള ഷോപ്പിന് ഇതെങ്ങനെ ലിവറേജ് ചെയ്യാൻ പറ്റും എന്നുള്ളത് ഒന്നുകൂടെ വിശദീകരിച്ചാൽ എനിക്കൊണ്ട് കുറേ ആളുകൾക്ക്, കാരണം പലരും ഇതിനെ നമ്മൾ മറ്റൊരു ആമസോണോ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ ഫ്ലിപ്കാർട്ടോ അങ്ങനെയുള്ള ഒരു സിസ്റ്റമായിട്ടാണ് എല്ലാവരും കാണുന്നത്. ഒരു പേടിയോടുകൂടി കാണുന്ന ആളുകളുണ്ട്.
അത് മാധ്യമങ്ങൾ അങ്ങനെ എഴുതിയതാണ് അത് തുടങ്ങിയത്, റൈറ്റ്? തിങ് ഇസ് ദാറ്റ് ONDC is very unique as a project because there is no prior reference point to say okay, this is how business can be done, right? Azagba പറഞ്ഞ പോലെ ഇപ്പം ഞാൻ ഇവിടുന്ന് ഒരു ഓർഡർ പ്ലേസ് ചെയ്യണം ഒരു ബിരിയാണിക്ക്, റൈറ്റ്? I have to eventually buy from here, right? I'm not going to buy biryani from outside. Let me take a simpler example. I want to buy a VKC chappal, right? I would get it from a nearby store rather and be more efficient rather than service it from a far go down or a warehouse in Bangalore, right? So therefore this network is built with the principle that smaller stores in the paga. That's why I brought this slide, right? 1,79,000 sellers, right? Already ONDC Bhagwan. These are all not big companies. Big companies are there, but these are also small stores in Chennai, in Bangalore, in Trichy, in Pathankot, in Jammu, in all across India, right? And the whole idea here is that smaller stores, Kudumbashree is a part of the ONDC network, right? In Kerala, Kudumbashree is a big one. A lot of PSUs have joined, some private stores have joined across Trivandrum, Kochi, etc. And more stores are coming in, right? And these 1 crore products have been uploaded by these sellers, right? So that's on an average about 51, 52 products per store, right? And they have been onboarded by those stores, not by the parent company saying that I am selling this, right? So being inclusive is the core goal of ONDC. Sarkar ingane oru karyam thodangiyathu thanne ചെറുകിട കടക്കാർക്ക് കോവിഡിലുണ്ടായ ബുദ്ധിമുട്ടിൽ നിന്ന് മനസ്സിലായ കാര്യങ്ങൾ വെച്ച് പഠിച്ചാണ് ഇത് ചെയ്യാൻ ശ്രമിക്കുന്നത്. കുമാർ സർ, would you like to add?
One more.
I think the worry was that if you have a nearby store and that store is already scared, lots of e-commerce website, do I really do well? I think that scare is real. It is a worry, and many of them are there because they know that they can't compete with an e-commerce company and they don't have the wherewithal to go e-commerce. ONDC will enable them to go e-commerce. One. Secondly, on ONDC, the store that is selling is the same store that is the seller. In the sense, on Amazon, if you ask a customer when did you buy a chappal, they'll say, whom did you buy it from? Nobody knows the seller. In ONDC, you will know the seller because the big building block in ONDC, correct me if I'm wrong, building block in ONDC is the seller's name is getting registered. So if I buy from a VKC store, but I also buy from nearby Kumar Traders, I know that the stocks I'm calling for is from Kumar Traders nearby because he is the seller there. Or it can be VKC, the company, that is now created a methodology to show that all my traders, all my nearby retailers would be available on the ONDC network. So as soon as the customer places, I can supply to them immediately. 2. 3, because of the fact that it is as hyper local as possible, if I am going to buy, and I'll give you an example of a mobile phone because this is the real story, right? In Bangalore, all of you know about Sangeeta Mobiles. Yeah. Now Sangeeta Mobiles was already doing some business with online with other marketplaces, but on ONDC they were seeing that lots more traction was happening for them many days. Why? Because the order comes to them on ONDC telling that they want to buy a Samsung on Sangeeta Mobiles. The nearest Sangeeta Mobile immediately delivers to the customer in half an hour's time. So I talked about the fast in the morning. This was as good as quick commerce for the customer. They were able to supply immediately to the customer, and they were saying that you are getting all the fun that comes along with knowing the seller, because the biggest reason why customers, 85% of the customers, more than that, are buying still from a nearby store or store of their offline business is because they trust them. Trust is a very important thing. So the trust gets taken care of by the ONDC. Trust is the same, the channel is different. So when you're selling online, it's the same trusted party selling to you online. I think these are the main differences. Now, can it completely remove your worry? Not necessarily. But the fact is customers are doing things online.
This one more add-on question. See, this local store, do they need to have their own delivery option, or they can use the system which is there inside? See, there's a major concern because many people, it's a single owned or maybe 2 people, 3 people owned run store. So how do they deliver the goods to the nearby house or whoever it is?
Sir, like I said in that one of the Atta example, നമ്മൾക്ക് ONDC ഡെലിവറി സോഴ്സ് ചെയ്യാം, അതായത് ഏതെങ്കിലും ലോജിസ്റ്റിക്സ് കമ്പനി ഉപയോഗിക്കാം. നമുക്ക് നമ്മുടേതായ ലോജിസ്റ്റിക്സ് പാർട്ട്ണർ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അതിനെ ഉപയോഗിക്കാം, അല്ലെങ്കിൽ നമ്മുടെ കയ്യിൽ ഒരു കൊച്ചു പയ്യനുണ്ട് അവനെ വെച്ച് അയക്കണമെങ്കിൽ അതും ചെയ്യാം. Right? It's a store choice as to how the delivery will happen. Depending on your capability, depending on your interest, your cost threshold, etc., you can choose how the delivery will be done. But it is eventually going to be delivered. Adding to what Kumar sir said, right? If you open the ONDC apps, right, and say that I want to buy fresh fruits, right? You are going to see supermarkets that you're familiar with or nearby stores that you're familiar with, right? The trust part, like Kumar said, is absolutely a step. You are not buying from Big Basket or Amazon or Flipkart. You will buy from Aishwarya Supermarket or, Salim Supermarket, whichever, or, the nearby store that you are, familiar with, right? The trust is established between the store. So your buying is not from the platform. Your buying is platform or the network is just a channel. You continue to buy from the nearby stores that you were always buying from. Another example that I'd like to quote, our conversations with large mobile phone, OEMs, right? So if you look at it, OEMs don't want any of your stores to be online, right? It's a common thing, right? You only want e-commerce to happen from portals, right? In the ONDC model, they're very happy because, quoting the Sangeeta mobile example, you're not sending the phone to somebody in Jharkhand, right? If a sale happens, it is intended for a Kozhikode customer, right? Probably who's 2 kilometers away from you. And therefore, even the mobile phone OEMs, for example, are very gung-ho because they are not seeing any distribution challenges coming up with the way the ONDC network operates, right? We're not challenging their distribution setup. We're not sending, you get a, big billion day say discount, buy 10 phones here and then put it on and like a week later on e-commerce and sell it somewhere else, right? All of those problems are eliminated. Therefore, ultimately the seller is a core part of the story, right? And therefore it's very critical.
I think we'll need to wind up, but I'll tell you 2 examples to do for everybody here. Please go to a Paytm or whichever is the app that's available to you. Go and buy something online because we are all retailers. Until we experience it, it's not any use at all. So buy it. I mean, I had a guy from the press coming into the office and they were saying, is ONDC going to kill all your members? So I said, not necessarily. So they said, how do you say that? I told him, here, take this gulab jamun. So I had ordered a gulab jamun half an hour before they came into my office. Okay, so it showed Gasitaram very clearly. The dabba was Gasitaram. I told him I bought from Gasitaram just now on ONDC. They said, very nice. How did it come? I said, actually, I placed the order for Gasitaram on a Paytm app. Okay, it was being supplied. The Magic Pin was its seller app. The supply was Dunzo. So Magic Pin was the seller app. Dunzo was the supplier. The order was picked up on Paytm app, but it was an ONDC food on Paytm app. It came to me in half an hour's time. Now it's a very complex process. It's made very simple. In half an hour, I got Gasitaram, but I was very happy that I was giving the Gasitaram gulab jamun to the guys who would come in. Right? So I think that is the beauty of what ONDC can do for each one of us. But you should go and experience it. There is another thing for some of us, and I'm telling this for our retail friends. You should be able to go outright and tell customers that I'm now available online on ONDC. Okay. Now this is very beautiful because you are available on ONDC network. They could be going to a Paytm. They could be going to a app that is by PhonePe, which is your PIN code. They could be going to anybody. But the fact is you are telling them you are now available. That means they now know you are available online. I think it's important to keep on telling this. Otherwise, many of our members are saying, when will ONDC become big enough for me to get a lot of orders? I tell them, no. ONDC is going to tell your current customers you are going to be available to them all the time, 24/7. Raat ko dukaan band ho gaya, subah tak I'm still available to you on ONDC. That is the big difference. Some of our members, like now Sangeeta is telling, how can I use ONDC as a brand in all my communication so that I can tell everybody now you can also buy me on ONDC. Now that is the big difference. I think we as retailers have got the ability to now tell everybody, why are you buying from various places? Go online and buy from ONDC because we know the cost of operation there is much smaller.
Thanks.
Just 2 questions.
There are many questions here.
I'll pick it up one on one.
How many of you think that you are all price leaders in this room? Raise your hands. Price leaders? No, you're not a price leader. How are you a price leader? No, you are just a value provider. You are not the price leader yet. I mean, you could have somebody else who is really sasta in the drinks, no? See, the thing is that a value brand, a good value brand, is not necessarily a price leader. In the sense that there are some who are saying, "My boss sasta hu, le lo." Correct.
Yes.
Price leader, I said, leader. Okay. Correct. It's not cheap. So therefore, none of us normally believe that we can really fight purely on price, right? We will keep things to be where a customer says the money I am paying is paisa vasool for whatever I get. That's value. Definitely. Not just that. No, that's a different answer. So the answer is like this, that customers are still coming and buying from us because they trust us, because it's sometimes convenient, sometimes, not always. And many a times they know that what they are buying for, what they are being shown is what they are getting. What they are going promised is what they are getting. जो दिखता है और जो भरोसा वाला है. I think we all have to leverage our trust on the customers through ONDC. That is the big difference. Because, I'm sorry? Well, actually it is not. ONDC is just an enabler. The customer doesn't even see the stamp. The beauty of ONDC, and I come again to this again and again, is that the seller is known to the customer. Okay? If I am buying from Gasitaram, for me the trust is Gasitaram. It is not ONDC, it is not Magic Pin, it is not Dunzo, It is not Paytm. All of them were involved, but the final delivery to me, when things go wrong, I'm going to go back to Gasitaram and say it's not right. Because that is also the risk for the retailer. Unless everything goes together, if they have not delivered what they have promised, they will not say ONDC did not deliver. They will say Gasitaram did not deliver.
And a buyer has got the permission to go for option of particular geographical location, right?
Geographical location, the store that they know, I think most of us, frankly, many of us, if we go back, when we want to buy our normal items that we are accustomed to, we like to go back to the local guy and say, they don't, because we know that that is trustworthy. I mean, there are lots of, jaggery. How many of you differentiate jaggery to jaggery?
If there is 5 or 6 same product, how can the seller be in advantage? Because
That's a good question. You want to come? That's your question.
So I want to just go back to, sir, the network doesn't govern pricing, right? It is, like Kumar said, a combination of trust, pricing, your reputation, that will ensure you get an order. Which will bring me to the next question. If you have similar products, right? The buyer app will exercise, first level buyer app will exercise judgment saying, what should I show first? It could be rating based, whatever be the criteria, it will show you, right? What the network mandates is and makes sure is that the buyer app will provide the customer an ability to sort, filter, change that displaying order, right? It could be ETA, which means which is the closest, it could be price, it could be rating, it could be, variety, right? All of these options should be available to customer to choose, right? So you're competing in a fair marketplace. The network just ensures that you are still competing with people that may have similar products online. I think with that, we'll conclude.